Hello and welcome to BharatShakti.in. I am Brigadier Chatterji. We are going to be talking about the situation in Ukraine today. Is it a turning point or is it not so relevant tomorrow as we look back into the history of Ukraine? What is it like today? And in that, our primary focus will be on the ceasefire agreement and what could possibly it evolve into as we go along. To take us through the paces over here, I have Brigadier Arun Sahgal with me. Brigadier Arun Sahgal and me have also been colleagues earlier.
Yes.
In the War College, and he's a net assessment expert. Perhaps he's the man who actually introduced net assessment, I would say,
In India, yes.
In India. Currently, he's with a think tank, otherwise a strategic thinker, and one who has been to our the conversations quite regularly, I would say. So, welcome to Bharat Shakti. Very nice of you to spare the time.
Thank you.
If I could just ask you to make an opening statement about what the situation is,
Okay.
A little bit of a background, whatever way you want to start.
Okay. Let me try and explain Ukraine conflict as an infinite game. Infinite game is where there are play without rules. Nobody knows what the end state is. So in this game, there are three main players. One is, of course, Ukraine, which is fighting for its survival. Its sovereignty has been attacked and it wants to join up with European Union, NATO as part of security matrix. Then it is Russia. Russia believes that the eastward expansion of NATO is an existential challenge because after that what people do not normally take into account is that Moscow is just about 150, 200 kilometers, 200 miles from the border of Ukraine. So it's an area which is hugely vulnerable to any eastward expansion. And as we have seen that as the Americans have brought in the long-range artillery and missile system, they have been hitting the main town of Moscow, the capital of Russia. So to them it is an existential challenge. And as far as US and EU are concerned, for them this whole war is about degrading and the military and economic potential of Russia, who they also see in their terms as a threat, an existential threat to the peace and security of Europe. So all three players are looking at this whole element from a different perspective. Now, let me dwell upon what are the Russian aims. Russia has four aims. First is seize control of eastern territories of Ukraine, basically from Dnipro River eastwards. Four oblasts, they are Lyshanka, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson and Donetsk. The whole idea being is to create that as a buffer zone of Russian-speaking people. Okay. The second element of their thing is that they want to neutralize any concept of Ukraine becoming a NATO country. They do not want that to happen, and that's an absolutely no-no. And third element is demilitarization. Demilitarization is basically to create so much of damage and incapacitate the Ukraine military so that it ceases to pose a threat. Another issue people do not fully understand is that Ukrainian army is 8,80,000 in comparison to now mobilized Russian army of 1.5 million. So its difference is not that much as generally seems to be. It is the third largest army in Europe. The second army, if you can consider as America as a part of a European this thing, is 1.3 million. And next is only France, which is 200, and Germany 180, and England is less than 100,000. So when you look at these numbers, there is a method in this madness as to why they want to do it. As far as the US is concerned, when US and European Union has been fighting a proxy war through Ukraine, the whole aim of them, as I mentioned earlier, was to defang Russia, both in economic and military terms. But after 3 years of war, they realized that this is not happening. Particularly, the United States is realizing it is not happening. Second, they're realizing is they're getting too deeply involved into Europe, which is impacting on their overall strategic posture vis-a-vis other key areas, particularly the Indo-Pacific. Most important thing from the American perspective is that they do not get any strategic gains by doing this if the aim of defanging Russia is not achieved. If Russia is undermined, yes, it's an important issue, but since it is not happening, so they are losing interest. So this is the play over here. European Union is concerned that if Russia wins or Russia establishes its control over these territorial spaces, then the problem that will occur is that Russia will have now reason to move forward westwards. In the north, it has Belarus as a launch pad. In the south, it has Ossetia and other territories over there. So it will further move and, in the first instance, impact the stability of Eastern Europe, which has just now joined together. So so this is where the Trump comes in. When Trump comes in, he realizes that in the overall construct of things, Europe commitment of America is a losing concern. He says, I do not get any strategic gains, and yet he does not want to completely pull out. So he pushes this proposal for Ukrainian peace. Now, Ukrainian peace proposal is important from his perspective.
I'm going to come to that peace proposal hereafter.
Okay. So this is what the Americans want. Americans want peace, ceasefire. But there is a problem here. In American perspective, the first is the ceasefire, then whole issue of delimitation, territorial control, and other issues of putting peacekeepers inside, etc., all have to be thought through. Then removal of sanctions, return of the assets of Russia which have been impounded, etc. But the Russian perspective is entirely different. Russian perspective says, first we have to discuss the terms and conditions of ceasefire, then we will discuss the ceasefire.
Yeah, I was coming to that only, sir. If ceasefire, if you could just dwell a little bit on it and tell us about it, exactly what's on offer as far as the Americans are concerned, and exactly what are the issues that the Russians insist on, like comprehensive ceasefire rather than...
Okay, so the American offer is very simple. The American offer says ceasefiring, 30 days ceasefire, which they have agreed with this thing. No firing in the air, no firing on the ground, overall complete ceasefire. Number two, that following that there will be a contact group. Contact group will be created who will now define the terms and conditions of maintaining the ceasefire. They will define which all the territorial control will be acceptable, where they will ask the Russians to pull back, or whatever arrangements in terms of territorial management will be discussed. I would not say ask anybody. The arrangements of territorial management will be discussed. And once they have established then of course there will be a peacekeeping force. And as far as their perception is concerned, it will be European Union plus others. That is the kind of peacekeeping force.
We'll go to peacekeeping force also later.
So as far as the Russians are concerned, in the discussion that President Putin had with Trump yesterday in a phone call, Russians have very candidly put the perspective that we must agree to the terms of the ceasefire and then only come to the other issues. So from the Russian perspective, the ceasefire is the end state. From the American perspective, the ceasefire is the beginning of the process. So there is this whole clash, and in this, what they have done yesterday, they have come to a sort of a, because see, having after 3 years a discourse, direct one-to-one discussion between the two presidents of Russia and America once again started to talk, the Russians are not very keen to break the contact. So if they don't want to break the contact, so what they're trying to do now is to ensure that the dialogue carries on And as a part of the carrying on of the dialogue, what Putin has done is he has accepted that he will not attack energy infrastructure.
That's the only thing
Okay.
that's supposed.
In the energy infrastructure, there are a lot of interpretations being done. The most important issue is Zarazofya's nuclear power plant. They want to maintain that it is not destroyed. So when we talk about energy infrastructure, since it produces electricity, so it is deemed to be a concession given
Europe as such.
to Putin. Although President Trump, true to his form, has said it is energy come plus infrastructure. That's wrong. The readout from the Russians is energy infrastructure. So it's one word. He says energy plus infrastructure, but he will not hit the hospitals and power plants and communication centers, etc. So that's not the issue. So this is what has been this. And the second element of this thing is something which has not come out in the open in so much of clarity, is the fact is that there will be a new maritime ceasefire will also be done. That is because the Russians are having, and Russians are very happy with that, because Russians were having a big problem in ensuring their stability and maritime movement and maritime control in the Caspian Sea. Sorry, the Black Sea.
Black Sea.
In the Black Sea. So that is the whole thing. So the bottom line right now is this. And there is a third element in the ceasefire, the European Union. European Unions are pushing for the fact is that we cannot accept a ceasefire till such time there is a certain degree of stability of the ground, on the ground. And because till that there is stability, they want to shove in the European Union forces to as first tier peacekeepers. That's something which the Putin has clearly said no, there will be no European Union or NATO forces entering into Ukraine.
Right. One question about NATO as such. There's a lot of difference in opinion, like the American stance and the European stance really. American stance is being driven by some other priorities. European stance is more a question of not allowing Russia any more room at all. So do you think this is going to strengthen the NATO? This is going to weaken the NATO? This is going to create a fracture? What is the status?
Okay. So first and foremost is NATO has been a reasonably equal partner in supporting Ukraine in its military capability enhancement. But the issue is that it does not have any great capacity to replace United States of America as a major supporter of Ukraine. It doesn't have the military manpower, it doesn't have the military resources, he doesn't have even the missile systems and other elements. Just to give you an example, if Starlink pulls out of Ukraine, there are two alternative systems, but they are very weak, they are not expended, and they are very hugely expensive. They have only covered even 10% of Europe, so their footprints are very limited. So bottom line today is that on its own, European Union can be at best supporter in concert with United States of America. On its own, it does not have the capability. These 34 countries are a man dog, 2 men and a dog, and a couple of divisions, and that's kind of a story it is there. So it is there, they do not have
a choice.
They don't have a choice. So they have come out with this rearmament plan. The European rearmament plan talks about $800 billion of investment. Day before yesterday at the NATO conference, India-NATO conference, I was telling the NATO representatives, I said, you have a plan, it's a great idea, great plan, etc., etc. But please understand, to spend $800 billion, you will require minimum of 5 to 7 years. You will not be able to do that. And for that, you need technological manpower, you need capacities, you need manufacturing space, and you need more raw materials. Where are they going to come from? So it's a long-term perspective in which the NATO is trying to invest to become an important player. The ability of NATO, in case United States pulls out, is going to be extremely limited to support Ukraine. So my assessment is that United States is not going to pull out. United States will support it, but United States will support it in terms that on on its own terms, and it will seek as a compromise from as a part of the compromise is that Ukraine accept a reasonably acceptable ceasefire, which does have an element of territorial concessions to Russia.
If we go forward a little bit, Zelensky's future also is a little, well, tottering a bit, I would say, depending on how the situation evolves over there.
Yeah, yeah.
In any case, elections were to be held, but they have not been held because there's massive.
Okay, elections is a...
But what do you see, what do you have to say about Zelensky's future? Does this...
See, one of the elements which Putin is very clear is called denazification.
Yeah.
Denazification basically means is removal of Zelenskyy and holding of elections. There is a perception which the Russians have, rightly or wrongly, that if Zelenskyy is removed and the second-tier leadership comes into play, the current chief of general staff and or the foreign minister, etc., who was in Delhi, they are a much more, let's put it this way, reasonable people. They are not warniks. They are more peace-loving guys. So it will be easier to do business with them. So what is, from the Russian perspective, is that if there are elections and a new leadership comes in, that provides them with the elbow room to negotiate.
Better.
Even territorial controls can be negotiated. Okay, so one of the issues that you had asked me also to cover was the territorial, what is the kind of control. So as of for the 4 oblasts, the situation is that in the north, they have about 85 to 90% of control. Coming there towards Mariupol, Kherson area and all that, the control is just about 65 to 70%, about that much. That is the general area of control. The whole idea is to push the defenses as far forward towards the Dnipro river so that it rests on a river line, so and provides a degree of security to the Russian occupied area. On the Battle of Kursk, Sadzla has been captured, which is the nerve center of this thing. 20% of Kursk now is in the hands of the Ukrainians. But what is happening is that if the war does not stop, the northern area, Sumy area, there is an area called Sumy which is next to Belarus. Now that area will become open to an outflanking maneuver by the Russians, and that is something which the Ukrainians are not very happy about and not very concerned about. So the Kursk situation basically is that the offensive have been by and large been rolled back, the old 20%. Their lines of communication and logistic support have been cut off. So it is only a matter of chance that this is happening. So there is a thought process which I have been discussing with some of the analysts both in Europe as well as in Russia, that there is a thought process of Russia offering a ceasefire proposal. That ceasefire proposal is going to be built on the Easter, because the first time the Protestants as well as the Orthodox Church have the same day Easter.
Okay.
This is the first time, 18th of May. So 18th of May could become the start point of and this month and a half or 2 months that I have provides Russia with adequate time to consolidate its hold and consolidate its positions.
I have one more question.
So
then that's about, you've already talked about it, peacekeeping force. My question is pertinent only to India's participation. How do you see an Indian role in this whole business?
Okay. Absolutely. Excellent question, sir. See, when we're looking at peacekeeping force, there are 3 or 4 elements to peacekeeping, which we have to understand. Your viewers should understand that there is first is the agreement on a ceasefire line accepted by both sides. That has to be first accepted, discussed, accepted.
Definitely.
And then that line has to be maintained. Okay. So maintenance of requires forces, friendly forces, in which both sides have a confidence in. And in this area, like I've said in my interview to India Review, that India is the best place, people, to do it. We've seen Prime Minister's statement. He says India is unwilling to play. India is willing to play a role as a peacekeeper. Number two, we are accepted by the Russians. Ukrainians will also accept it. And between us and the Chinese, we certainly stand a better
Definitely,
chance than anybody else. The second is a joint military commission, through which the exchanges are done. The joint military commission looks at these are your weapon, pull back your weapon, this guy's weapon, clear this area, etc. And brings about, let's put it this way, deconflicting of the war zone. And in that, again, if India is acceptable in the military commission, India is acceptable here also. The third element is contact group. The contact group is which keeps in touch with both sides and all the other parties. In this case, the parties are, as we know, three major parties: Russia, Ukraine, and the European Union / NATO. He keeps in contact groups. Here again, you need people where everybody has a confidence in. And if you see how the things have panned out in the last couple of months, or say less couple of weeks, and say the European Union came here. We have Zelensky's man sitting here, and foreign minister sitting over here. We have had a good contact with the Russians. The Prime Minister has been to United States. So, by and large, if there is any country which has the capacity, capability, experience, and who has been one of the most prominent peacekeepers in the United Nations, it is India. And therefore, India is the key player, in my view, to do this job.
Right, sir. I think we'll call the discussion off at this point in time because we've already spent a lot of time on this. Thank you so much for coming to BharatShakti.in, sir. Very nice of you to have spent your time with us.
Thank you.
And thank you, viewers. Thanks for tuning in. Do tune in like this time and again, and you will find such interesting updates. Thank you.